Welcome, everyone. My name is Louise de Boissaison, and I'm the president of Cyrille.
My name is Federica Aristigueta, and I'm the vice president of Cyrille.
We are delighted to welcome guest speakers Cyrille Vigneron, president and CEO of Cartier International, and Mercedes Abramo, CEO of Cartier North America, along with our moderator, Georgetown student and Cyrille member Jules Lee. Cyrille Vigneron has been the president and CEO of Cartier International, as well as a board member and a senior executive committee member of the Richemont Group since 2016. Prior to this role, Cyrille Vigneron has been president of LVMH Japan and worked for Richemont from 1988 to 2016, rising to become managing director of Cartier Japan, president of Richemont Japan, and finally, managing director of Cartier Europe. Cyrille Vigneron started his career at Compagnie Générale des Eaux before joining Péchinet. He's a graduate of the ESCP Europe Business School. A French national and the father of 4 children, Cyrille Vigneron is a music lover and a devotee to the Japanese culture, translated in the writing and publication of a book, De Geisha en manga, Chronique du Japon d'aujourd'hui.
Mercedes Abramo was appointed president and CEO of Cartier North America in 2014. She is the first female and the first American to hold this position in North America, overseeing the strategy and operations of the entire region. Ms. Abramo began her career at Cartier in 2008 as director of the flagship Fifth Avenue mansion, later serving as assistant vice president of New York retail, overseeing all New York boutiques, and then as vice president of retail for all of North America. Both within and outside of the workplace, Ms. Abramo is a passionate champion of supporting and empowering women. She's a founding member of The Chief, the membership network focused on connecting and supporting women executive leaders. Additionally, she is a key advocate for the Cartier Women's Initiative and serves on the advisory board of the nonprofit organization Luxury Education Foundation. Ms. Abramo holds a BA in political science from Sewanee, the University of the South, and an MBA in international luxury brand management from the prestigious ESSEC Business School.
Jules Lee is a senior in the McDonald School of Business, majoring in international business and marketing. A member of the winning team in the Georgetown Cartier Challenge, Jules has over 7 years of experience in the luxury industry. Starting off as the first ever high school intern for Vogue magazine, she has cultivated a digital audience of over 150,000 followers, combining both Instagram and YouTube, and works regularly with brands including Dior, Gucci, and Armani.
Before we start, on behalf of GRLA, we want to thank Cyrille and Mercedes for taking the time to be here and share their invaluable experiences with us, the entire Cartier team, Jules for moderating this event, Professor Ernst and Wilbur Hidalgo from the Global Business Initiative, Professor Sajak, where to look, the McDonald School of Business, and the dedicated members of GRLA for putting this event together. Now I will provide a brief overview of the rundown of the event. The conversation between Cyrille, Mercedes, and Jules will run for 30 minutes, followed by a 20-minute Q&A. We'll provide further instructions about the Q&A later on. Now please welcome moderator Jules Lee, Cyrille Vigneron, and Mercedes Abramo.
So once again, thank you two both so much for joining us today on the Hilltop. I'm sure we're honored to hear from 2 of the luxury industry's most prominent leaders. So as you can see, we have a room of around 200 Georgetown students. And as aspiring business leaders, I'm sure that they're interested in hearing about your personal careers and how you got to where you are today. So starting with Mercedes, could you give us a brief overview of how you got to your current position?
Thank you. Well, I think they did a wonderful job of introducing me, so not too much more to say. But I would say from the beginning, I was interested in both luxury and in retail. My father was an executive at Lord & Taylor when I was growing up, so I was exposed very much to retail, hospitality, working directly with customers, grew up in a suburb of New York City. So I actually originally went into the hotel industry. I spent about 8 years working in luxury hospitality, living in Atlanta, Michigan, Hawaii, and finally Miami. met my husband along the way, and then we had an opportunity to move to France for his work. So we lived in Strasbourg, France for 3 years, when almost actually 25 years ago. And that was when I went and did my MBA in Paris. And when I returned to New York, I was really debating, do I go back into luxury hospitality or do I go into retail? And retail was really calling me. I went to another luxury retailer that we don't speak about. No, that's not true. I went to another luxury retailer, and then Cartier found me, and I had the wonderful.
You graduated.
I graduated, yes, great way to say that. Graduated from another retailer, and Cartier found me and asked me to be the head of our flagship mansion on Fifth Avenue. So that was a wonderful coming home story back to retail, attachment to the French culture, and then worked my way through retail and more management positions in North America, and finally now as the CEO in North America.
I think it's always refreshing to have female CEOs speak too, because most of the luxury is dominated by men. But we also know that you all, according to some of the Cartier directors, they described Cyrille as the Einstein of the luxury industry. So we're very excited to hear about his unique philosophy. But as we heard in the introduction, you spent a lot of time in Japan and you have both personal and professional ties to Japan. So could you talk about your experience moving from Japan back to Europe and how it was heading departments in the Asian market?
So it's moving to Japan is always a big shock.
Mhm.
And many things in my, I think, in life and career went in a way which kind of unexpected. So long time ago, when I was a student, I had a Japanese girlfriend, and it was really fun in Paris. So I decided to make a surprise and to go to see her in Japan. It was not a bad surprise, but it was not a good surprise either, because the way she had to behave with her parents was entirely different. And so it's just what I got doing here. And at that time, Japan was very kind of odd to me.
Mhm.
It was very polluted, it was very difficult. I was not prepared. And it was really a cultural shock. I think I can never, ever live in that kind of country. When saying polluted, you have to know that at that time, there was smog in Tokyo all the time. Policemen had an oxygen mask at the crossing, and it was really difficult. Going to the subway, and the kind of crowd I never imagined. There were some pushers to push people in the subway.
Mhm.
They had gloves, but they were pushing people. And it was a kind of life I didn't think. So I say, okay, it wouldn't work. And so anyway, came back to Europe, and I thought I would never go to Japan again. Then with my professional life, also I didn't think I would be in luxury, but I turned to be by chance because I had a colleague who called me, and I started to work, and I thought that luxury was kind of a crazy world. After kind of engineer-driven kind of companies, very industrial, I had enough of that, but those were so short-tempered. They were so creative on one side, but so disorganized and so messy, and shouting at each other all the time. I said, oh, they're really tiring, so I don't think I will stay there. But I stayed there 2 years and 5 years and 10 years and so forth, up to a point where I was head of IT and organization. I'm a very low-tech guy, but anyway, I was appointed to that job, and I was the only one who said yes. That's why I got this job. So sometime in career, things come in an unexpected way. It was just that no one wanted it. And so I was there and they said yes, and it turned to be okay. So 6 years later, my boss told me, what do you want to do? I say, oh, I've worked with a jewelry team and I think it's really cool. I would like to be the head of jewelry. He said, no, do you go to Japan? Okay, and I thought maybe not. But again, it was a kind of a job you can't say no, because it was the biggest market at that time. And to become the president when I was 37 years old is something you don't say no. Even if I had not seen product, client, retail, and nothing, and the deal was to double the turnover. So it was a kind of one-way ticket. And I didn't know whether I would fit in Japan quite well. And I loved it because it had changed and I had changed and I was ready for it. But I had to change basically all of my perceptions of what it is to be a human being, an individual, collective, perception, attitudes, codes. And at the beginning, I was bumping myself everywhere, but even just kind of how to present yourself. I liked colorful things at that time. I was wearing kind of a Leonard necktie full of flowers, and I had a little bit of Snoopy's on my socks, and I liked it. It was cool. But I had not realized I was 35, 37 years old, and normally people were 65 and not dressed like that at all. And so I say, if you want to be taken seriously, you'd rather change your clothes. I say, oh. And when I arrived at the hotel, there was a box, a welcome gift from the exco, which was a necktie and socks, the ugliest I had ever seen. And I said, this would be hard. But I found a way to find the Japanese clothes that I could get, because there was a lot of fashion, just a little more subdued. But realizing that when you come and everyone is twice your age, including your exco, you have to make more effort. So I had to make more effort to adjust, and I did adjust. I did adjust quite well, but also a big change, because during that period, I got divorced, and but then met my current wife. We've been together. We are celebrating this week our 22nd wedding anniversary. And so I adopted Japan, and Japan adopted me even more, having the 2 younger kids born there, and who are half Japanese, half French, or double, both French and both Japanese in some way, because it can never be really half. And half are perceived as not at all. So we told them, never think you will be accepted as fully Japanese, because you're not, and you're not grown there. When they speak fluently, they have the Japanese passport, but it's a part that can be something positive. It's something also difficult. Dual identity can be difficult. But anyway, we lived there for 9 years. Cartier Japan grew very well, doubled the sales, everything was fine. And then I was asked to take the Richemont operation there to build on what Cartier had done to grow it. And after a while, when I have done that, 3 years working hard to make new offices and a common communication agency and unwinding the agency contracts for the other brands, the group thought that it was maybe not the right thing to do after all, and so wanted to undo what I had done. So I said, okay, we'll go. And I will leave because it's not what I want to do. But they say, no, don't go. We have another job for you in Europe. I went back to Europe, and there was another cultural shock, that I got so much used to Japan that France was hard. So there was a kind of you learn languages, and languages are a really good thing to learn culture. So in Japan, there is a word called gaman, gaman-suru. Gaman-suru is an active word. It's an active word to make effort to endure. So gaman shimasu, I make effort to overcome the hardship I have. And so discussed with my wife, and she said, how do you say gaman-suru in French? She said, don't say it, because it doesn't exist. You just go on strike. It's kind of thing French don't know how to do. So they know how to complain, and they can know how to think out of the box. So some of the Japanese don't know how to think out of the box. French know, but Japanese know better how to gaman, and to do something gambarimasu. A lot of things I make effort, I give my best, I dilute my identity for the collective will. So I learned a lot of things from Japan that didn't exist in France, and I found Paris beautiful, but hard, grumpy. When you had strikes all the time, and people unhappy, and all that, complaining about everything, and just simple things didn't work. Go to the furniture shop and to buy something to furnish the house, and half of thing came. I called to complain, and they say, we delivered all. I say, it didn't arrive. I say, can you prove it? Say, no, because the driver couldn't stop, because there was only a driver, so he didn't want to stay long. So he just dropped the box on the floor and just asked me to sign, and he left. And I didn't want to leave that on the floor, so I took it, but then it was half missing. So they say, no, we looked at the delivery bill, everything was there. This was not there. And say, but I gave my credit card, I paid you in advance. So if you think the way you do, I will never do business with you again. I say, okay, we make an exception for you, we'll deliver what was missing. And I had to fight for everything. So I had the cultural shock on the way back. And then I had to adjust to try to say, okay, let's find the good thing of how to think out of the box, how to have creativity. Let's find also the other things that Japan can teach in the way to have mutual respect and harmony. How to know that they bring in some cultural attitude, that's just attitude. So if you want to have people coming at 8 o'clock, you will ask Japanese to come at 8:15 and French at 7:45. Everyone will be at 8. It's okay. Don't make a fuss. It's just like that. And if you try to really push everyone to be at the same time, it never works. But everyone respects some kind of things that French would come 20 minutes later and not 45. But Japanese will come 15 minutes ahead.
I myself moved from Asia back to America, and I spent some time in Europe too, traveling. And also the part about how you mentioned that you can't be half-half. I feel that a lot because in Korea, I'm not regarded as full Korean. In America, I'm not regarded as full Korean. That's a very interesting point for sure.
But you can take the best of both
Yeah.
as far as you know who you are. So when you know your identity and you don't expect to be accepted fully, but to be accepted as different, then it's easier. When I understood I would never, ever be accepted as Japanese, but I learned Japanese language and I learned how to respect the country and how to be there and to understand in depth. And that's why after I wrote a book out of it, it was really fantastic. And in some way, I didn't have to fulfill all the Japanese obligations, so it was easier for me. But the point is not trying to be perceived as Japanese, which would never happen. It's okay.
Okay, thank you so much for that background. And now that we have speakers, let's move on to talking about Cartier as the brand itself. So here at Georgetown, we only have one full luxury course, which is luxury marketing taught by Professor Scuba, who was just here. It's still very hard for general students and the public to know about hard luxury, so timepieces and jewelry.
It's hard.
Because
Yeah.
we're much more familiar with soft luxury, which is fashion. And so Mercedes, could you talk a little bit about how these two are different and if there's anything about the jewelry industry as a whole that you would change?
Oh my, well, there's a lot of differences, and I'll start, but I will also I know you would love to hear Cyrille's point of view, but I think we look the concept of time, and it's interesting because we sell timepieces, but the concept of time is quite different in hard luxury versus soft luxury. So soft luxury tends to be overall more fashion oriented, more trend oriented. So designing pieces, bringing them to market is a quicker turnaround. So in general, from everything from creation to design moves much faster in soft luxury than hard luxury. We take a lot longer process to design a new watch or a new piece of jewelry. There's a lot more care and attention that goes into the craftsman. It takes a lot of time to develop team who can make the craft, who can be the jewelers, who can be the watchmakers. So is a quite different concept in terms of how you actually manage the company. What is similar is in the retail store, for example. We definitely, we have similar codes of luxury between soft luxury and hard luxury. But again, still the decision-making process, I think, for a hard luxury customer, somebody buying a piece of jewelry, buying a watch, takes a bit longer than if you're going to buy a pair of shoes or buying a bag. So I would say time is the biggest difference, but there's a lot of other differences as well.
Tend to think there is only one time. And there is one time. We have one day, we have 1 week, we have 1 year, and it's been the same for everyone. But it's not true. Time is not only the elapsed time, but what happened during that time. And so there are some sectors that go fast and some sectors that go slow. And it doesn't mean that they are structurally better or not better. It's just like this. Like some animal live 1 day, some animal live 20 years, human about 80, whales much more. That's the way they are. So if we're in cosmetic, the time is very fast. Things change all the time. If you're in fashion, it's kind of a rhythm of fashion with about a year. And so when you think about what means short-term, mid-term, and long-term in those things, it means something different. If you are in a high tech now, time is really quick. I mean, short time will be kind of 3 months. Mid-term will be a year or two. Long-term is after 2 years, and basically you don't know. And you have to move in that. For us, or when it comes to high jewelry, short-term is 2 years, which is the time to make one piece. Mid-term will be 5 to 10 years with time to make a workshop, or time to develop relationship with client. And long-term will be eternity, because products last forever and can be transmitted forever. So, but eternity doesn't exist in fashion because it's changing all the time, or just as far as fashion changes all the time. So when you are in different sectors, even in the same group, you have to understand that there are very, very different time frames. And even in a sector like hard luxury, when you work with digital teams or things which are high tech and evolving fast, you have to understand that this one needs to move fast, but others needs to move slow. Because if you make them too fast, but they're too slow, they just get out of their not only comfort zone, but it can be really, really get hurt. So there are things you can't do faster. You cannot make high jewelry faster, but you make industrial process for other things go faster, a little faster, meaning faster than the rest of the industry, but not as fast as the other part. There can be some merit in being slow. When there was COVID, everything stopped. So if you stay at home, you don't buy the fashion for the month.
Mhm.
And if you don't buy the fashion for spring, you will not wait until October, right? It's too late because spring is spring.
Mhm.
In our case, it doesn't matter. Their product lasts forever. So if you wait a little more, there are love rings or the Justin Clou or a clash and still nice 3 months later.
Mhm.
So in some way, the COVID has made kind of a big hit on the time scale. So we're going too slow for those who were too fast, and the others in some way were fine.
Mhm.
And in some way, hard luxury went quite well because it was going between these of short-term fashion. So hard luxury or a brand that were in some way the most stable, not in fast fashion, but stable fashion, like Hermes and Chanel, had been riding better because the time clock had stopped. So those who were really in a very, very short time frame suffered more. That was interesting paradox that hard luxury sustained better because of that part that COVID made everything on hold.
Mhm.
And when everything restarted, it was easier to restart hard luxury than soft one.
So you mentioned that luxury in the long term, hard luxury is eternal. And we know that Cartier is one of the most timeless brands to exist. And by nature, I think that hard luxury, since it is eternal, is somewhat more sustainable than other sectors. And we also know that the deconsumption movement is a huge part of your philosophy. Could you talk a little bit about sustainability in luxury and the deconsumption movement and your thoughts on it in general?
Well, this can be a full conference on that topic. And so I will take some bits of it and I will leave also Mercedes to talk about. So first about deconsumption. And deconsumption can be a bit counterintuitive. But anyway, we have to consume less of basically everything we consume. So if you have a utilitarian view in the world, it will say we'll stop consuming what is not necessary. I would just go to what is very useful, make my priorities, the bare necessity. But it doesn't work. It doesn't work for one reason, is what we need to consume less is what is absolutely necessary. We need to consume less energy and water and food and elements which are the resource of the planet. So we need to consume less what is useful. Of course, we need to consume less, a bit of everything. So that's why the part of reuse, recycle, and are important things for all the activities. But in some way, in this case, we need first to consume less of what we use. If we don't understand that and only stop to consume what we don't need, it will not make the world better. So we have to consume a little bit of less of everything. There's something where Americans consume 30% more food than European and 30% more than Japanese, and for Korean as well. We're basically the same size. It's just a habit. Of course, to unwind that is very difficult, but you can live very, very well by 30% less because Japanese and Korean live very well, and they're very thin and very fit, and they live very long. So the food they have is very fine. If all the world was eating as well as Japanese are doing, there would be no food problem. So it doesn't mean the solution is not there, but how to change the habit to do this way? That's a difficult question. So that's a part of the general thing of deconsumption. Then the part of which is also element is what makes us happy is what is not useful. We have to understand that the entire humanity from the beginning has done things that were not useful for elevation of the mind or the soul or just pleasure. So what makes us happy? Love. I hope it does. To me, it makes me very happy. Art, sports, culture, literature, sharing together things is not useful. And we have to understand that when we do things about all obligation, what lifts us up is things which are not useful. It's a luxury in some way to work and to be beyond the survival mode. When people are in survival, they do only useful things. And life is not really nice. You can start doing something better when you're beyond that level. That's also why we have a responsibility towards the most vulnerable. And that's a common moral obligation. But out of that, we have to make something beautiful. So we have responsibility for beauty. So when we have stopped consuming everything we don't need, what will remain, the beautiful thing we don't need, but are what makes us really, really happy. So when it comes to luxury, some parts are in a way that have to consume less. And in some way, fashion is more concerned because fashion has gone to the trend to do more and more things that you wear less and less. That instead of having 2 or 3 collections per year to go 4 or 5 and 6. And now people consume more products and clothes and they wear 30% less than before. So probably we have to unwind that and to continue to say we can wear things longer with something which are more durable and some design that are more durable. So there is a fashion has to go to deconsumption in some way. Also, there are key questions with fashion, with cotton or certain fabrics that need so much water and has a very, very high footprint on the carbon emission. So when on the other side, hard luxury, and the more we go to the part which is sustainable design, I would say, or eternal design, thing that can be there for 20 years, or 30 or 50 years, that can be appreciated by a generation, then you can transmit them. So we work more and more to have them a more durable quality. And also I think can be very appreciated by old generation, that you push from one generation to the next and you can continue like that. So in some way, we work with recycled gold. We can work with recycled steel. On that, we can make product can be reused, repaired, transmitted, and that's perfectly what luxury should be about. Do something which can last forever, and then the imprint on resources is very limited and can be constantly recycled. So hard luxury in that will have a better future, I think, in the deconsumption world than fashion, because it's a common thing. And for sustainability, you have also to include element of sourcing, of human rights, of environment. And that's why we're deeply committed with the Science-Based Target Initiative, with the Watch Changer Initiative to bring all the profession to do that, with full traceability of what we do, with the environment concern. Also, because we're also prosperous to do things with the most vulnerable, with Cartier Philanthropy, or with nature, with Cartier for Nature. And I can name more, but maybe you can ask also.
Can't follow that.
And I'm passionate about that. So
Well, I actually read the LinkedIn post you wrote about Buddhism, and I thought it was really interesting that Cartier, the more than 90% of the gold you use is recycled. And I also learned that you guys ban unethical sourcing like Burmese stones. So that was a really huge part. And also closely related is obviously diversity within the sustainability initiative. So Mercedes, would you mind talking about how Cartier is incorporating diversity and inclusion, and specifically maybe about the Women's Initiative?
Of course. Well, I will definitely start with the Cartier Women's Initiative because it's been the program that we've had the longest. It's over 15 years. We have a grant program every year where small businesses, really very early seed businesses, can compete from around the world for capital from us. So there's 7 regions. Any sort of social impact business, they do tend to come a little bit more from healthcare and tech sectors. But there's an annual contest where you go through a business case plan, you get interviewed, you have to present in front of an independent jury. And then we give a financial reward to the 7 winners. And we're actually just expanding it to other regions and to also a specific diversity, equity, inclusion award. And then we believe very strongly in supporting the entrepreneurs, but it's not just capital that we're trying to help with. It's really relationship building and knowing, especially for women, that a very small percentage of venture capital still goes to women entrepreneurs. So our goal is, in addition to a seed funding, is to introduce the entrepreneurs to VCs, to a network. They all get invited, the winners get invited to go through a program at INSEAD in Europe about social entrepreneurship. So it's really about helping them at the very early stage of their building of the career. And we're really proud of it because it's been 16 years now that we've been doing it. And many other organizations have only recently started that. So for us, it's something we're really proud of as an external impact. Internally, you mentioned in my bio that I was the first female CEO of North America, but honestly, and Cyrille can say this, early on, we had very few women in leadership across the globe. We had only 1 or 2 country managers that were female, and now we have 50% of our country managers are female, and many of the biggest countries, obviously US being one, are led by women. So we're also doing a lot of work internally to make sure that we have development of female leaders along with our development of male leaders. So that's extremely important to us. And on the topic of diversity as a whole, I mean, I think we all know, especially in the US, but across the world, there's still a lot of work to do to make sure that we are serving underprivileged groups in our clientele and making sure that we're welcoming to everyone coming through our stores, but also in our employee base. So making sure that we have access to different universities, different skill areas, different parts of the country where we can get underrepresented groups interested in the luxury business. Because retail in general as a career is a wonderful career, and we're going to continue to have started and continue to do more work with different groups across the US.
Intentionally, when I joined Cartier many years ago, 30 years ago, there were 22 regions, markets, and only one female managing director. 2016, it had progressed, come to 25 markets, 20%, meaning 5. How long would it take at that pace to close the gap? So they need to have much more proactive policy. It's like, the gender gap currently is said to be about 200 years to close. So you really have to work hard if we want to make it. So we made this internal program that also identify those among the female senior executive or junior executive who were ready for higher role, and to proactively promote them, even in region that were supposed to be, no, this region is too tough for women. This region is too tough for women. So Russia, no, is too tough. You need really strong men. Middle East, you need strong men. Japan, you need strong old men. And we have successfully assigned Russia to a young Russian woman who is doing super well, and now she's moving to Southeast in Singapore. Middle East, with the first female CEO was Cartier. Also, there was no luxury company who had a female CEO. Also in Japan, and Jun Miyachi, she's Japanese, she's in her 40s, and she said the average in my peers are 65-year-old men or 40 years old foreigners. There is no women. I'm the only one. And say, good, then there will be others after you. And same in Korea, where it seems to be very difficult because, of course, the department store culture is very tough. And when the traditional way of doing business is to go and drink together, and until you're getting drunk, you don't respect it, right? You know that. But anyway, you can say no, and you can say no. I will do something different, and I'm not like this. So now we have a 50% of our CEO, president, managing director who are women, successfully around the world. And it's US, China, Japan, the 3 biggest one run by women successfully. So now it's not a question to say whether it's possible. It's just a question to say, well, who is the next generation to come and to replace? So some areas are more masculine because in a watch industry, it's very much engineers in the Jura, France and Switzerland, and it attracts more men and boys than women. It's a pity. Jewelry is getting more and more feminine, but now when it comes to regions, we have a very nice gender balance, but it needs proactive action. It doesn't come on its own.
I didn't realize that there was that issue when you first entered, just because in Korea, it's always been female-led, especially Insu and Christine in charge of marketing and director. So it's very interesting to hear that. And since our topic today is luxury reimagined, we talked about diversity, and we want to move on and end with a question about technology. So how is technology and AI changing the luxury landscape? And especially working on the Cartier Challenge, I realized that this is a huge thing because although e-commerce is huge, the consumer experience of going into the store and trying on the products is very important for hard luxury especially. So could you speak on that?
So there are many questions in that question. But so have to also come to 2 kind of preconceived ideas, which I think are not necessarily true, especially in our sector. First thing, what really matters is innovation, do something new all the time. This is true in tech, it's not necessarily true in what we do. 10 years ago, we were obsessed by that, saying make more novelties than anyone else. And also the price, if you want to go to younger customers, you have to do something more techy because that's what they want. But by doing that, we were kind of losing our style. So 6 years ago, so we stopped that. We just come to look at all the beautiful patrimony we have. So take the image, so you come to an old palazzo in Italy or in France, you open the windows, you brush the wall, and you look at the beautiful frescoes, and you start to love them for what they are first. Then you see what you do around. And it's somewhere the same. Look at all the things that are beautiful, have been there for a long time. And if they have been cherished for a long time, probably they can be cherished longer. So by nurturing this icon, then we develop much more got back those clientele who like Cartier for that specificity of design, and including very young ones. So we're now much younger now, without doing something young for the young, but doing something meaningful for all. And it's been, again, a brand appreciated across generation, from your age to your parents' age to your grandparents, and all together can appreciate. And now my daughters and son, they come and get in my watch collection, or my wife and so forth, and they want them. It was not the case 10 years ago or 6 years, they didn't consider, but now all their peer group are in there. So first, go to something not necessarily new, but look at things with fresh eyes. And that's already a part of innovation. You come in, art is the same. You can look at old stories and make them new, because all old stories are very, very human. So this obsession for innovation in some way is just to flee from reality. Look at things with fresh eyes is more important. All the artists now, you can make a new version of West Side Story with an old version of West Side Story, with an old version of Romeo and Juliet, and it's the same story, and it touches our heart. So look at things with fresh eyes, especially when you're a long time. Second thing, you can innovate, but innovate when it has meaning. So 7 years ago, say, if we want to make the brand younger, we should make some connected watches because young people like connected watches. Okay. But we have a problem with that our design lasts 4 years. The Tank Cartier has been there for 100 years. The Love is 50 years. Justin Clou is 50 years. Many not know that Justin Clou was designed in New York in the 1960s by Aldo Cipulo. It looks so modern and fresh, but it's 60 years old. And so if we come to put some very old design and things that is perishable, what do we do with it? If we put a movement, which is a connected movement, in a watch, 2 years later, we have to change. When you talked about the consumption, we have to consume much less of these that go too quickly perishable because they are made on purpose to be obsolete too fast. And that's a problem because it creates a lot of scrap. I think there are 250 soccer fields full of these scraps every year. And it takes all the rare earth on the planet. But we could this thing in 10 years, it could work. My BlackBerry used to work longer than this one. But then this one is more useful, but it goes fast. So if we put a movement like that, which is connected but gets perishable in 2 years, what do we do with it? So we'll not do that. But what we did, we made for the relaunch of the Tank Must, tried a movement which we call a solo beat, which has a solar panel, which is hidden behind the dial. You just don't see it. And it gives energy to make the movement watch like a quartz movement without quartz and battery. And it can last for 16 years. So we made the newest, and no one had done that, in the oldest model, and it's the most durable. And probably the next generation will last 20 years. So we change the movement once, it can last for 35 years and 3 generations with nothing and no maintenance. So that's innovation in technology, in something true to our design and true to who we are. Made something durable and cherishable a long time. Not to come to something high-tech that looks cool, but then it's obsolete in 2 years. You don't know what you do with it. It doesn't mean that the high-tech will not be useful on your wrist to measure your heartbeat, to measure your steps, to know if you're in good health, if you sleep long enough. But usually, I know I don't need to have a system telling me, I know, hey, guy, you have to run more. And I know I have to run more. I know I have to rest more. And basically, But anyway, sometimes it can be useful to, and some get obsessed to have their metrics and statistics every day about, I don't know, how many steps they have done going from here to here. Maybe. But so we are here to do things that don't give time, that tell who you are, and they're to be cherished for a long time. So we make useful innovation. Then what can be the usage of artificial intelligence? We use it. We use it for our supply chain model. We have changed entirely our demand supply. It used to be something where you define model stock or you define sales forecast and you consolidate in your supply. And it looks rational to do so. But when things are closed by COVID, you just don't know where to will need when. So you have to aggregate demand and make some other kind of demand model. And then when you come to deploy them, you have to use other kind of algorithm. And by using those who are done by Netflix or Amazon recommendation model, it can do something very useful. That using AI to do optimized deployment system. So by using that, we could rebound much faster than the sector where we are that was much more of inertia. So we use innovation when it's meaningful, and we use things that are true to us, but we're not obsessed by something new or obsessed by technology or by this promise that progress would come and make things better.